Alright guys, it's Jerningam again here. I hope if you guys have not seen what happened to Parliament yesterday, it got closed down in the UK. Most of you people probably don't follow politics or know where the UK is if you're from a different country or from England anyway. I'm going to click onto it and see the video. So this is Parliament yesterday. There's Tony Blair. There's David Cameron there as well. There's John Bercow, the Speaker.
Labour MPs protesting around the Speaker's chair. They've been asked to attend the ceremony in the Lords.
They're trying to stop John Bercow from leaving the chamber, the Labour Party, not the Conservatives on the left, the Labour's on the right.
I will play my part. This is not, however, a normal prorogation. It is not typical. It is not standard. It's one of the longest for decades, and it represents, not just in the minds of many colleagues, but huge numbers of people outside, an act of executive fiat.
The Speaker went to the Lord's ceremony heckled by Tory MPs.
Do your job, for which you're handsomely paid.
The Prime Minister had shocked his prorogation of Parliament.
In Her Majesty's name and in obedience to Her Majesty's commands, prorogue this Parliament to Monday, the 14th day of October.
Labour Party is singing in the House of Commons and the Conservatives in the House of Lords.
Some Labour MPs sang the red flag. Hardly any Tories hung around to welcome the Speaker back. Our divided politics on stark display.
There's stuff about it being anti-democratic. We were very, very clear that if people wanted a democratic moment, they wanted an election, we offered it to the Labour opposition, and mysteriously they decided not to go for it.
The Prime Minister went ahead with election campaigning, promoting schools policies, even though he hasn't got the election in hoped will have started already.
And who can give us some information about William, Duke of Normandy? Oh, yes.
There's a Prime Minister in the school,
Yes.
Boris Johnson.
Why did he think that how did he have a claim to the throne of England?
When Harold was sailing to Normandy,
Do you remember? What did he swear? We'll just move on.
he swore an oath of loyalty to help William, Duke of Normandy, claim the throne of England.
Exactly. Well done.
Exactly on the.
But what would the voters have answered if this was full-scale general election campaigning right now? The company Focal Data polled 19,000 voters and piled in extra data and constituency profiles to predict what would happen in an election result today, seat by seat. Compared to the share of the vote in the last general election, this poll suggests the Tories and Labour are both down more than 10 points, with the Dems doubling their standing and the Brexit Party doing much better than UKIP managed. What does this mean in terms of seats? In Scotland, this was the last general election result, and the Focal Data analysis suggests a vote right now would produce another hung parliament, with Labour down on seats and the Tories making no real advance. At the heart of the whole Tory election strategy is to make inroads into Labour areas in the Midlands, seats like Ashfield in the north. Your analysis suggests the Tories are doing that, but not enough to negate the fact that they're losing seats in Scotland, Aberdeen, for instance, to the SNP, and to the Dems down here in England, places like Lewis.
Yes, I mean the Tory strategy relies on sort of realigning.
Yeah, hopefully.
Away
I don't know.
heartlands up to traditional Labour heartlands that supported Leave. This is a bold strategy, and it's, to be honest, probably the only winning strategy they have. But they're not currently taking enough voters with them. But it's very, very close.
But right now, the Tories are more or less, when you net out the gains and the losses, they're just standing still.
Currently, they are standing still. But in the case of a campaign, it's so finely balanced that the campaigns are really going to make a difference.
Some Tories think the Conservatives must start their campaign with a full-blown pact with the Brexit Party, something Number 10 is holding back from.
The only way they're going to vote and support us, those voters are going to support us if we haven't done Brexit,
frankly, is if the Brexit Party says you should vote for your Conservative candidate in this seat. I don't see any other way. I'm still waiting for someone else to explain to me how it will work. I just don't see us squeezing their vote down without actually doing the deed.
In your analysis, Labour are picking up some pro-leave.
Nigel Farage needs to get in and help Boris Johnson to get the numbers. The Conservatives and the Brexit Party, I think.
They got last time. Kensington, to take an example, Warwick and Leamington. They're rolling backwards.
Because Labour and the MPs of Jeremy Corbyn are just going to keep stopping the deadline, the referendum from 2016.
They took up in 2017, and it looks like the Lib Dems coming back are taking a lot of Remain supporting voters. Labour are going to have to do something, I think a bit more drastic than they've been doing at the moment if they are going to, they want to be the biggest party, they want to have a majority. They are absolutely miles away from doing that at the moment.
No, it doesn't really shock me from being out there in the public. I think that I have long felt that there is a risk that we have a general election for essentially the numbers not to change dramatically enough to benefit.
Mind you, they failed on the general election yesterday in Parliament.
He believes the Tories can squeeze back the Brexit Party vote. Analysis suggests if they got them down to 7%, the Tories might get a 100 majority. If pro-Remain tactical voters swung behind Labour or the Lib Dems, depending on where they stood a chance of winning, that could give Labour a thumping majority. The DUP have just been in to see the Prime Minister. Some of them are privately worried. Number 10, boxed in by opposition manoeuvres and by the law, could be exploring a Brexit deal that leaves Northern Ireland alone following EU rules, not the rest of the UK. The EU's incoming trade commissioner tonight said he thought there were signs of movement on both sides over Brexit. There are doubts in Brussels whether this Parliament or the next one will sign off on a deal.
Gary Gibbon reporting with me now to discuss that polling is senior Conservative MP and former Chief Whip Andrew Mitchell. Andrew Mitchell,
this is ridiculous.
It doesn't seem to suggest that it will be any different from the.
I think this will be an election when finally the Labour Party reaches it, which is absolutely.
People keep messaging me on my phone, on my Instagram and Facebook while I'm trying to film a video. Very annoying. Then people on Xbox Live messaging me on the phone, and
particularly armed with a good One Nation Queen speech are very good.
Well, the strategy seems to be to concentrate on those
and the PS4.
voting seats in the Midlands and Scotland and in Northern England.
Yes, I'd rather agree with what Dominic Cummings said to the journalist outside his house. I mean, I think there's a very, very different feeling outside of the M25 beltway, outside of metropolitan London, where people who voted feel they've been cheated. And there have been 3 years of argy-bargy. They want to leave. So I do think you get a rather different view. I find it in the West Midlands, particularly as well, where there are some seats.
Argy-bargy, chicken-bargy.
I very much think we are quite well placed to gain.
Well, our poll sort of suggests that might be true, but the biggest thing is that if you're really going to get a majority, you have to have a pact with the Brexit Party, and that, to people like you, is an anathema.
But I don't think that's true, John. I think that if we have left by October the 31st, then what is the point of the Brexit Party? And also, we've got a Prime Minister who led the campaign to leave, who is emphatic about leaving. It doesn't seem to me there's an awful lot of relevant political space there for the Brexit Party.
But nevertheless, this poll suggests, and there are others too,
the Brexit Party can help us leave the EU, European Union.
The key is
no deal.
Whether or not we are able to leave by the 31st of October. That is going.
You don't believe that we will. Let's be candid. I mean, you're a realist.
No, I do believe. I think it's very important that we do honour our promise and leave by the 31st. But I am very keen indeed that the summit should deliver a deal. And after all, this is the first time.
Respect the 2016 referendum when people wanted to leave. But they're not. They're betraying it again.
It is now by Remain Leave. Those are very deep definitions in Britain at the moment, which has split our country right down the middle. You've got 2 Remain parties, 2 Leave parties. But if we leave on the 31st, which I profoundly hope we will, and as I said,
we should have left last year. This is this year.
With a deal, then it seems to me that the Brexit Party's box has been shot.
That's Mrs. May Mark IV. I mean, we just get another defeat.
No, I think that the deal that Boris Johnson is clearly straining every sinew to achieve is one which will be better than the deal that was so heavily defeated in the House of Commons.
Wouldn't
And
his
that's what he's
strange
working
sinew
for.
be better exercise actually in Europe, going around trying to get a deal?
I think there's an awful lot more going on behind the scenes than is generally recognised. And in EU negotiations, you have this business of texts that are draft and are not therefore tabled. I think there is a plan. That's what Boris has said, and I very much hope he will be successful.
And you now think still that a general election is the answer to all your worries?
I think that our legitimacy in the House of Commons is coming to an end. We need an election to clear the democratic air. We need a fresh mandate, and the country needs to decide who best to govern that.
Well, it goes to show, doesn't it, that the country doesn't seem to have their own mind up, but hopefully we'll get there.
Boris Johnson is a Prime Minister who finds himself rather boxed in. He's predicated his entire premiership on one single aim: to leave the EU on October the 31st, deal or no deal. But how on earth is he going to do it? MPs have blocked his attempts to get a general election, at least try and get a popular mandate from the people for his Brexit on Halloween. They've also passed a law requiring the Prime Minister to seek an extension with the EU if he fails to secure a deal to avoid a no-deal exit on October the 31st. Cornered but not surrendering. He is sticking to his own plan. He will step up negotiations with Brussels, but he's also clear of one thing: he will not ask for an extension, setting him on a collision course with Parliament and perhaps even the courts by October. The best chance he has is to try and get a deal, but if he has a plan B to get us out without a deal on October 31st, he's not telling his cabinet or any of us what it is. Will he resign? Will he fight it in the courts? Will he ignore the law and run down the clock? Will MPs try to collapse his government? These are the sorts of nuclear options that we're heading for come late October.
Ask the European Commission in public and they'll tell you they're still working to the assumption that the UK leaves at the end of October. But talk to them in private and they are increasingly convinced that what will really happen is Boris Johnson coming here to Brussels in the middle of October for the summit and asking for an extension. Now that would have to be signed off by all 27 of the other EU leaders. And there has been a suggestion that the Hungarians or the Poles might issue a veto as a favour to Mr Johnson, but in reality that's very, very unlikely. In fact, the only leader who might conceive of vetoing the extension is Emmanuel Macron of France, who is biblically fed up of Brexit talk. But I don't think he'd really want to upset the Euro apple cart that much. So the most likely thing is an extension, probably till the end of January. Now, talks are going on between UK and European teams, but there's not much talk of concrete progress. Instead, so far, we have no deal, no clarity, and no real guarantee of when Britain will leave the EU. For the moment, it's all up in the air.
As this threat of deal or no deal continues to hang over us, one thing we do know is there's going to be a lot more uncertainty. And uncertainty is something that households, businesses, and indeed the city don't much like. It means weaker growth. The good news is the economy isn't in recession at the moment, or probably isn't. It looks like we've got a bounce back in the last month, and employment looks relatively strong at the moment. Bad news is it's nothing to write home about. This isn't very strong growth. And as we fixate on our domestic crisis, there's all sorts of things going on around the world, whether it's a trade war, whether it's China slowing down, Germany potentially being in recession, or indeed a technology revolution that could change the world. That could be a massive opportunity for Britain, if only we could start talking about something that was
What a day this is.
Today, Parliament stands empty, shut down by a Prime Minister running away from scrutiny.
Jeremy
But let me
Corbyn's
say
speech
this,
about Prime Minister Boris
we
Johnson.
mustn't ever mistake the drama at Westminster for what real politics is about. What truly matters to people isn't resignations, defections, and late-night votes in Parliament. For most people, all of that is a million miles away. What truly matters is the reality of their everyday lives, in their community, on their streets, and at their workplace. Real politics, for me, isn't about the parliamentary knockabout with all its baffling language and procedures. Real politics is about giving power to people who don't have a lot of money and don't have friends in high places, so they can take control of their own lives. Boris Johnson's political strategy is perfectly clear. He wants to stage a showdown over a no-deal Brexit that he can repackage as a battle between parliaments and the people, with the people in this
I do think to myself, Jeremy Corbyn's full of it all the time, but it's up to you guys to decide which side you'll pick, is Conservatives or Labour or MPs or DDP, Republic of Ireland, Scottish International, Scottish Labour Party, Wales. It's up to you guys to decide. Northern Ireland.
On the side of the establishment. They are the establishment. And this Tory government isn't so different from any other Tory government. They will help the rich to get richer and make working class people pay. Johnson's reckless no deal would destroy jobs, push up food prices in the shops, and cause shortages of everyday medicines that people rely on. And it will disrupt supply chains in manufacturing industry and lead to all kinds of problems in many other places of work. And who bears the cost of that? It wouldn't be Johnson and his wealthy friends. It's not their livelihoods on the line. It will be the rest of us. Just as it wasn't the bankers, who Boris Johnson still defends, who paid the price for the financial crash of 2008. It was tens of millions of working people who had absolutely nothing to do with it. For the Tories, this is about so much more than leaving the European Union. It's about hijacking the referendum result to shift even more power and wealth to those at the top. They will use a no-deal crash to push through policies that benefit them and everyone else, just as they did after the financial crash. Under the cover of no deal, they will sell off our public services, strip away the regulations that keep us safe, and undermine workers' rights. And they will cement all of this in a race to the bottom trade deal with Donald Trump. Be in no doubt, a no-deal Brexit is really a Trump deal Brexit, which will lead to a one-sided United States trade deal negotiated from a position of weakness. It will put us at the mercy of Trump and the big US corporations itching, absolutely itching, to get their teeth even further into our national health service.
It's an half go on, Jeremy Corbyn, I tell you. He always talks a load of rubbish, Jeremy Corbyn, but it's like I say, everyone votes differently, likes different things, and so I need to find, see here.
Order. I will come to points of order in due time, and I shall bear those honourable members in mind. Colleagues, I would like to make a personal statement to the House.
I've already seen this one, I think.
At the 2017 election, I promised my wife and children that it would be my last.
I've already seen that one. You don't want to see that one again, guys, when you already seen it the other day. I'll try and find a different thing to show you.
Two countries long bound by common arrangements are now facing the possible stormy waters of a no-deal Brexit. In Dublin Port, there are preparations to treat the Irish Sea as a fully fledged international border. A decision made all the more likely now Boris Johnson has made clear where he'd like to end up, in a relationship less close to the EU than Theresa May wanted.
So the destination of a Canada-style free trade agreement, fine, theoretically, but of course a Canada-style FTA wouldn't solve the border question, so it would necessitate the continued existence of the backstop from the EU point of view, and so it's not a solution.
At Dublin's port, they've assumed the worst and started acting on that assumption 2 years ago, launching a programme of investment to build new customs and inspection facilities. They assumed Britain would be outside the single market and customs union and planned accordingly.
Decided we would take the British government at face value. We're not involved in the political discussions. We decided that we need to prepare here in Dublin Port for the effects of a hard Brexit. The reason we did that was the lead time to provide the infrastructure necessary if there was going to be a hard Brexit. That lead time meant we had to start early, maybe sooner than Ireland generally was thinking about such an eventuality.
But of course the port can plan and build infrastructure, doing precisely what both governments have pledged not to do on the Northern Ireland land border. This morning, Boris Johnson came here trying to convince the Irish government that the British government has answers to the challenges and that they're negotiating in earnest.
I want to get a deal. Like you, I've looked carefully at no deal. I've assessed its consequences both for our country and yours. And yes, of course, we could do it. The UK could certainly get through it. But be in no doubt, that outcome would be a failure of statecraft for which we would all be responsible.
His host, though, wanted to make clear that leaving the EU without a deal was no solution at all.
And whatever happens, we'll have to get back to the negotiating table quite quickly. And when we do, the first items on the agenda will be citizens' rights, the financial settlement, and the Irish border.
Their talks were described as cordial, but nobody doubts that Mr. Johnson has reached the time for hard political choices.
Well, there's no denying that Boris Johnson wants to make progress on this visit, but also that he's very limited in his political room for manoeuvre. And really, he's only got one of two ways he can go. In terms of the alternative arrangements, trying to separate out the hard border issues and make them more palatable, or to have a border on the Irish Sea, which of course would bring him into conflict with the DUP in the north, and could only really be resolved by him winning a thumping Conservative majority in a new election and not needing the DUP anymore.
The DUP leader reminded us today that Mr. Johnson has previously said he opposes a Northern Ireland-only backstop. From the Republic's perspective, though, keeping Northern Ireland bound into EU regulations and tariffs is now looking like the only viable option.
I think the expectation on this side of the Irish Sea is that if there is to be a deal, it will be very much based around the Northern Ireland only backstop. That already was deemed acceptable to the EU and to the Irish government back in December 2017. It was the original solution which Theresa May had on the table, but then obviously it was rejected by the DUP and others, it has to be said, from the unionist community in Northern Ireland. So I think that if there is optimism, it's based on that, but obviously there's no guarantee that can be an outcome between now and the 31st of October.
The new infrastructure for inspecting goods arriving from Britain is now in place in Dublin Port, and it's already being used. And it's precisely because such facilities cannot be replicated on the land border that Northern Ireland may end up permanently in the backstop, even if the rest of the UK doesn't.
Well, that's what's been said. on that subject. Moving on to Donald Trump.
There's another breaking news I think we need to deal with here. We're just seeing via, well, where else but Twitter, President Donald Trump says, I've informed John Bolton, that is of course the National Security Advisor, last night that his services are no longer needed at the White House.
I think my TV's just turned off. I do apologise, guys. I don't know why it's just done that. Bloody annoying thing.
Strongly with many of his suggestions, as did others in the administration, and therefore I asked John for his resignation, which was given to me this morning. I thank John very much for his service. I will be naming a new National Security Advisor next week. I think we've got Alan Fisher actually to talk through this one. Alan, what's going on? This seems like a surprise.
One, a surprise, and two, this is...
Right, back in 2 minutes, guys. I'm just going for a quick break because I'm entitled to have a break while I'm filming my videos. And yeah, most people do. So yeah, back in 2 minutes. Like I say, sorry about that, guys. Just needed a bit of a break from the TV. If you guys are watching.
Brutal for Donald Trump. Normally when people are fired by tweet, and he's done that
Squeaky bloody
in
chair.
the past, then it's we've had a disagreement or his resignation has come and we know they've been fired. But here, this is pretty brutal, saying I asked for his resignation. There were a number of disagreements that we didn't agree with his point of view, and that was the same with other people in the administration. And so John Bolton is out the door. What is also surprising is that less than a couple of hours ago, we got a message from the White House saying that there will be a briefing at 1:30 this afternoon. Mike Pompeo will be there. Steve Mnuchin, who is the business secretary, the treasury secretary, he'll be there. And John Bolton, the national security advisor, will be there. I'm going to guess that John Bolton probably isn't going to be there now. Now, there have been disagreements between John Bolton and Donald Trump, and between John Bolton and Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo was very much in favour of peace talks with the Taliban, which of course Donald Trump told us yesterday.
Oh, they're mentioning the Taliban again, aren't
John
they?
Bolton was completely against that idea. So it appears that Mike Pompeo, if there's a battle between the two advisors, Mike Pompeo has won. But Donald Trump has always quite liked John Bolton. He, in fact, thought about him as making him Secretary of State right at the very beginning of his administration, but always the TV producer. He decided he didn't look the part. He wasn't from, to quote Donald Trump, central casting, particularly with his big moustache, and therefore he kept him as an informal advisor. Now, Mike Flynn was initially his national security advisor. He didn't last very long, we remember that, with problems with communications with the Russians. He then had General McMaster, who was his national security advisor for a while, but he didn't particularly gel with Donald Trump. And then he appointed John Bolton, darling of the right, very hawkish on Iran, Everyone thought this was a good appointment for Donald Trump, particularly given his stance on Iran. But it seems that John Bolton has just run out of room, that there is nowhere else for him to go in this administration. Donald Trump has decided he doesn't want his voice in his ear anymore. And as I say, if there has been a power struggle between the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, it looks like you can chalk this one up as a victory for Mike Pompeo.
Can I just go back to what you were talking about? Actually, it's what President Trump said when he said disagreed strongly. Just specifically, what were the big ones? Because John Bolton was always seen as he said it, this hawk, this very a big player in the administration. What were the big things which have been the downfall in the end?
Well, a lot of things, of course, will be argued behind closed doors, but what we can guess at are Iran. John Bolton wrote a number of op-eds saying this was the right time for a war with Iran, that there should be armed confrontation, that we should be getting into a battle there with Iran. Donald Trump, although he's very much in favour of putting pressure on Iran, has backed away a couple of times from any sort of armed conflict with Iran. And although he's getting voices from Jerusalem, particularly Netanyahu, saying they've got to confront Iran, Donald Trump doesn't want to get involved in a Middle East war, and particularly not 18 months or so away from, 2 years away from a presidential election. And then Afghanistan. Donald Trump's foreign policy is driven a lot by the idea of what has no one else done. No one else has taken the Taliban along and had peace talks with them face-to-face in Washington itself. Now, this was an idea floated by Donald Trump, that he wanted the Taliban leaders, if you believe reports initially at the White House, and that was put on hold because that simply wouldn't be a good idea, but then to take them to Camp David. But to do it this week, the meeting was meant to take place on Sunday. This is the week of the 9/11 commemorations. Donald Trump himself will be at the Pentagon tomorrow, on Wednesday, to mark the attack there. He will also take part in the national moment of remembrance at the time the first planes hit the towers in Washington, in New York. And so there's been this disconnect between John Bolton and also Donald Trump for a while. Donald Trump knew what he was getting with John Bolton, but he, of course, believes in taking his own advice. He said that about the meeting with the Taliban. I took my own advice. Quite entirely sure how you do that. So clearly there's been a disconnect with John Bolton, and he was told last night, thanks very much, John, it's all over, there's the door, leave your resignation as you're walking out.
Extraordinary development, and I'm sure we'll be talking to Alan Fisher more about it in the coming hours. Thank you, Alan. The breaking news in just the past few minutes. As Alan Fisher's been telling us, John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, the third National Security Advisor that there has been in this Trump administration, has been fired by Donald Trump. It's come out by tweet. It's come out with very strong language as well, with Donald Trump saying he strongly disagreed with John Bolton on many issues and therefore asked for his resignation, which was given. Another big name out the door in this Trump administration. We'll look to more reaction and analysis on that in the coming hours.
Well, that's Donald Trump and John Bolton speech. That was. Can't seem to find anything else to show in this video, guys, but let's see here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Give it a like, drop a comment, and I'll catch you on next stream and broadcast, if you want to call it that. Thank you for joining me, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one, guys. Peace. See you later, guys. Peace.